Welcome to episode number 277 of the Marine Layer podcast. It's our post-deadline mailbag episode, so we'll open it up and answer your guys' best deadline questions.
Just a reminder to you guys, if you want to stay on top of all of our stuff, you can go over to our website, marinelayerpod.com. We've got the whole 9 yards over there, you guys, between our episodes. If you're watching, please go hit subscribe on YouTube. That's the best way you can support the channel. Leave a like on the video, drop a comment. If you're listening, make sure to download and rate and review. Leave 5 stars for the episode. It really does help us out. If you're looking to get merch, we got merch. If you want to sign up for our Patreon, we'd love to have you get involved. Again, you get ad-free episodes or you get priority on mailbag questions. Bunch of good stuff over at our Patreon. Our live show schedules are on there. Again, that's our website, marinelayerpod.com. Go check it out. And then you can follow us across social media at marinelayerpod.
Let's get it rolling.
The pitch from Acevedo. A drive deep to right field. Down the line. The Mariners win this game 2-1. The dream lives. They're going to the playoffs. One from Jansen. There you go. Left field. We got a tie ball game. Julio. Oh, baby, what a moment. Tie ball game at 7-7.
And welcome you to this episode of the Marine Layer podcast, part of the Just Baseball Podcast Network. Recording on Thursday evening, July 31st, post-deadline. We haven't been able to keep up with these mailbags as much. We owe you guys mailbags, so here we are, post-deadline mailbag editions. Want to answer your guys' best questions. It was a fun deadline. It was an entertaining deadline. So you guys have plenty to ask about, and we're happy to talk about it now. And we love you guys coming up with topics for us. So let's dive into it.
Let's dive into it. As we sit here and you guys are listening to this on Monday, right after the Mariners series concludes against the Texas Rangers. We mentioned it at the end of Friday's episode, but TJ and I were in California this weekend for our friend's wedding from ASU. So congrats to them. And as we sit ahead of time recording this, congratulations to the Mariners for taking 3 of 4 from the Texas Rangers. Let's clap it up. Let's clap it up for the boys. They did their job. We love to see it. Geno's back, baby. I'm sure he's hit 3 home runs already.
How confident are you that's going to become true?
7.
7 out of 10?
I don't know what
my
confidence level is. I'm trying to be positive. Again, like we just wrapped up a really good deadline. People are positive. We want it to be positive. So I'm going to be positive.
That is very positive. I'm just imagining the comment section if they somehow get swept this weekend and you congratulate them winning 3 or 4.
Fine. I'll say this as well. If the Mariners got swept this weekend and you just heard me say what I said, no, you didn't. Men in Black, brain wipe, I didn't say it. Nope.
I like that. I'll go 3 or 4 too. I do like the positivity, Lyle. That's great. Yeah. So we are recording this a little bit ahead of time. Yeah, because we wanted to answer your guys' questions.
Right. So we're flying back here on this Monday. The wedding was Sunday, so we're flying back Monday, and we wanted to make sure we still got an episode out for you guys. We will talk plenty about the last week of Mariners baseball on Wednesday's episode.
Yeah. Let's get into the mailbag, Lyle, and let's start on Patreon. Reminder, guys, if you want priority for mailbag questions, go sign up for our Patreon, and you get the priority to be on these mailbags. You have a question for us? We'll answer it right here on the episode, just like Tanner does. Tanner's awesome, and Tanner sends in a question. First question here today. His I'd say general question is, what is your general thoughts on the deadline? Is there any team in the division, I like this question better, any team in the division that scares you at all with what they did at the deadline?
So we talked about it plenty on Wednesday for the Geno episode, or I guess that was Thursday. Thursday for the Geno episode, and then Friday for our trade deadline recap. Yeah, the Mariners had a really good deadline. We gave them an A. But in terms of the latter part of the question, which I think is the really interesting part of this, who scares you in the division? If I had to pick somebody, it's the Rangers, because Tyler Mahle's battled some injuries for the Rangers. Kumar Rocker and Jack Leiter are on some innings limits. So for as good as the Rangers rotation's been, and as good as Nathan Eovaldi's been, even though he isn't pitching this weekend against the Mariners, or didn't pitch this weekend against the Mariners, it's a good rotation. It also seemed like it had a chance to crumble a little bit because you were going to have guys cap at an innings limit, and Mahle's battled some injuries. But when you go get Merrill Kelly, and you also get 2 not dynamite bullpen arms, but 2 solid bullpen arms in Danny Colome and Phil Maton to help you, yeah, makes you take note of the Rangers a little bit. So if I had to pick somebody, I'd say the Rangers.
I'll switch it up. I'm still going to say the Astros, even though their talent might not reflect it because somehow, some way, they always manage to do what they do. And their pitching staff is still undeniably awesome. So I would say it's still the Astros. And what if, Lyle, what if Carlos Correa goes to Houston and for 2 months he's old Carlos Correa again? Or he's even Carlos Correa of last year. He's just reinvigorated now that he's on a team that's chasing for a division title.
I mean, that would be less than ideal.
It would not be good.
No.
Now, I will say it would be worse if the Astros ended up trading for Geno. But they didn't trade for Geno because Geno's ours. It's not theirs.
No. Can't happen. You can settle with Ramon Urias. Again, the Astros deadline was Ramon Urias, Jesus Sanchez, and then, yes, Carlos Correa. But I said it on Friday. I'll say it again here on Monday. The reason people get scared when they hear the name Carlos Correa is because he's such a name brand. And obviously he can turn it on at any time. But as we're sitting here and recording this on Thursday, right at the end of the trade deadline, Carlos Correa has not been some great baseball player this year. By Baseball Reference, he has 0.1 WAR. And I'm sorry, by OPS Plus, I think on Friday's episode I said 102. No, it's 92. 92. He has not been a great player this year. Maybe that changes because we know things change in Houston, and Houston gets the best out of their guys almost always. But aging, injury problems, big contract they're taking on, I'm just not sold that's some unbelievable move. We'll see. But the Rangers and their shorter-term moves scare me a little bit more.
Yeah, and that's fair. And the Rangers might, from top to bottom, have a more talented roster than the Astros do.
With Jordan out, with Paredes out, with Pena out, yeah. And I know Christian Javier is working his way back from Tommy John, but if he gets back in, September? There's no guarantee he's going to look all that great. It takes guys time to really get back into a full swing from Tommy John. Yeah. The Astros, they are just much thinner this year.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, second question. This one comes in on Patreon, too. It's from Josh. Shout out to Josh. And he said this. He actually said, I'm a fairly new Mariners fan, about 3 years. He wants to know where we think this trade deadline ranks historically for Seattle.
The best ever. They've never, I think, acquired more impact at a single deadline than they got at this one. Can you remember one?
No, I mean, the other one people will point to was when they really swung for Luis Castillo in 2022, but I'll say it again. You did not make the secondary move after getting the headliner that complemented it enough. Now, that team was still great, and they broke the drought, and they went to the playoffs, and it was awesome. But if we're just talking about the trade deadline, after Luis Castillo, you got Kirk Casale, backup catcher, Jake Lamb, who was barely hanging on as a bench outfielder, and Matt Boyd, who I know made the All-Star game this year, but when you traded for him, he was just coming off a major injury, and he just threw a handful of innings in the bullpen for you. It was a nice story because he got to come home, and he broke the drought with the team he grew up a diehard fan of. That was sick. But objectively, with the value of the guys you got after Castillo, it just wasn't there. The Mariners this year, you get the headliner, I guess you get him second, in Geno, but you get the headliner in Geno, and then you have the complementary piece in Josh Naylor to complement it, where it filled two major positions of need and makes your lineup legitimately a force.
If our age is showing here and we're not mentioning something in the 90s that matches up to this, you guys, of course, are always welcome to mention it in the comments. But off the top of my head, from everything I remember, I cannot remember this much impact being moved by the Mariners at a deadline.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to pull out the 1995 card because I have a good memory. More because I've watched the My Oh My documentary a million times, and I watched it so many times growing up that I have now it just ingrained in my head. But in 95, if you want to compare that deadline, they made moves that year. They went and got Norm Charlton that year. They went and got Vince Coleman that year. They went and got, who was the other guy? Tim Belcher. And maybe these names to a lot of people, you just don't even know them. To the fans that are a little bit older, I'm sure you do. Yeah, like they made moves that year, and they made the roster better. But I don't know if it's quite the level of getting an Eugenio Suarez for who he's been in 2025. Yeah, I think this is the best deadline they've ever had.
Again, most home runs ever traded at a deadline for Geno.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to match that. They weren't. No one's ever traded for that. So you can say just based off of that, yeah, that is the most impact they've ever gotten. And hopefully for the Mariners, it pays off. So thank you for the question, Josh. And thank you for signing up for our Patreon, one of our newest Patreon subscribers. It's awesome. Love that, guys. Next question is also on Patreon. This comes from Robert, and Robert's question is it fair to call the starting pitching the clear weak link on this team? If so, how weird is that?
I mean, it's certainly weird. They're supposed to be the group you don't worry about one bit. Would you call it the rotation or the bullpen?
Yes.
Oh, so you're worried about both.
For different reasons, though. I don't think the bullpen is talented enough. I'm worried the rotation is just not pitching well enough. For some reason, I can't pinpoint the exact reason, whether it just be year-over-year regression, whether it be the injuries, whether it be some other factor I have no idea about. But for each their own reason, they've struggled at times this year, and I'm not the most confident guy in the world. I can't just sit here and guarantee the rotation's going to be top 5 and the bullpen's going to be fine. Can't say that. Mm-hmm. But at least with one, I have the talent argument to fall back on where I say, all right, I mean, the Mariners' rotation, you could argue, has 2 clear ones in Brian Wu and Logan Gilbert, George Kirby and Luis Castillo, who are 2s, and Bryce Miller pitched like a 1 last year when he came back, assuming he comes back healthy and he pitches well. He pitched well last year. He was a number 1 last year when he threw. Mm-hmm. So, like, that's what you have in your rotation when it's all healthy. I can't really say that about the bullpen. You say, all right, we have Andres Munoz, all-star reliever, one of the best relievers in baseball. We have Matt Brash, arguably has the best stuff of any reliever in baseball. And Gabe Spire is one of the most underrated relievers in baseball with how nasty he is. Then after that, what are we waiting for? Gregory Santos?
There's no way. There's no way he's back in this bullpen this year.
I didn't think so either. I saw people floating that out there. It's like, okay, so it's Caleb Ferguson that you just traded for. Edward Bizardo is not matching up with other players in better bullpens. That's not happening.
No, but those are probably your 5. Munoz, Brash, Spire, Ferguson, Bizardo. Those are probably the first 5 you're going to go to, and the last 3 you got to pick. I know. Again, man, like, the Mariners had a great deadline, but it is fair if you're a little concerned about what the bullpen looks like and not getting that extra leverage arm. It's fair. You can have the worries.
Next question in the mailbag comes from Zach. Zach on Instagram says, how hot is Jerry DiPoto's seat post-deadline? Big moves were made for sure, but the moves feel like they were just short of a quote-unquote all-in push. They could have really went out and gotten Durant, or really could have tried to go get Duran, Griffin Jax, and Ryan Helsley.
Well, I think he means one of those guys.
One of them, not all 3 of them.
Yeah, so we'll dive into the bullpen a little bit more in a later question here on the mailbag, and we did talk about the bullpen for a bit on Friday's episode too. If you haven't checked that out, you definitely should. The seat question is always a fascinating one. I don't know if the deadline did that much to change that. I think what we always come back to is look, they need to win this year. They need to get into the postseason because that would be 1 playoff appearance in 10 years. I'm not in the minds of the Mariners executives. I'm not sitting up there in those board meetings. So it's hard for me to say exactly what would happen. Do they miss the playoffs this year? In terms of if they miss the playoffs this year? But, I mean, you would have to imagine it's a possibility, right? Like if they don't make it this year, you would think it's at least something that could be on the table. And I don't know. It's a tough question because this is one of those questions where I know people want a really definitive answer, but this is one of those ones that when you're not sitting in those meetings, it's hard to give a very, very, very firm take on something like this. But I would say you would expect it would be a conversation if they miss the playoffs again.
Let me paint the picture if the opposite result happened at the deadline. Like, you and I know if they went through this deadline and they didn't do enough or didn't do anything at all, in my opinion, the seat would be as hot as it would have ever been. Because it'd be, at this point, 1 playoff appearance in 9 seasons, prime opportunity at the deadline with all this ammo to go trade, and you don't trade it, then there would be no excuse. If winning was the goal, I'll add that. If winning was the goal, there would be no excuse not to go out there and try and make the playoffs. And if it doesn't seem like you try, then what is going on here? But they didn't do that. So if I'm going off of that, I would imagine, yeah, maybe his seat did cool off a little bit at this deadline because he did the job he was supposed to. And what fans care about the most, it's showing that you care about winning. And the Mariners, for the next 2 months, showed they very much do care about winning. That's important. That is a very important part of that. So yeah, I think his seat cooled off a little bit. I don't think he's totally off of it, if I'm going to guess. But I'm a lot like you, Lyle. At the end of the season, if they miss the playoffs, given how the Mariners ownership group has handled the last few seasons they haven't made the playoffs, I don't know if I have a solid answer for you for that, I would say. But if they do make the playoffs, he's safe, easily.
For sure. Yeah, they get in, they're safe.
Yeah.
If they
miss, he probably gets him another couple of years if they make the playoffs.
Probably. If they miss, again, becomes an interesting conversation. I think that's
so at that point with your core, it's 2 playoff appearances in 4 seasons and a top 5 farm system.
So
most ownership groups are okay with that.
So you're counting it since the start of 22.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And
remember, at 21, they actively tried to make their roster worse at the deadline.
It's still somehow won 90 games, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. So if you look at it that way, yeah, that'd be 2 in 4 years. And you're right. A lot of teams would sit there and say, we're good with that. So we will find out. That's for sure. Next question. This one is on Instagram. It comes from C_Wolf, and he wants to know, do the Mariners have a chance of keeping Geno and Josh Naylor for 2026?
I think they have a chance of keeping one of them. I don't think they could keep both of them. I don't think they're going to pay both of them. If you listen to us all offseason, you could probably pick up the fact the Mariners don't like paying free agent contracts. And both of these guys certainly have earned themselves a solid amount of cash in free agency. Naylor's the trickier one because I don't know how many years Naylor's going to go for. I think if the Mariners are going to pick one of 2, they would go for Naylor because Naylor's 28 right now, and it's better optics and better process to go out and sign a 28-year-old over a 34-year-old. 34?
I think Geno's 34 right now. Is he going to enter his age 35 season next year? Let me just double check to be sure. No, next year will be his age 34 season. He's 34 right now, but next year's his age 34 season.
Is a little bit better of an idea to sign a 28-year-old over a 33-year-old to, say, a 3-year contract, because I think that's what the Mariners are going to try. A 3-year contract would work a lot better with Geno than it would with Josh Naylor. They might not even want to offer Geno a 3-year contract. I think if they were going to offer...
what? Flip that. You said a 3-year deal would work better for Geno than Naylor. I think you'd be Naylor and Geno.
Flip that. 3-year deal would work better for Naylor than Geno. Since Geno's age, I think all the Mariners would offer is a more expensive version of the Mitch Garver contract they gave out, I think. But Naylor, you could see 3 or 4 years pretty comfortably if the Mariners were okay with that. But there's no guarantee this team's doling out free agent dollars. Just because they're willing to raise the payroll for 2 months at the end of the season doesn't mean they're willing to raise payroll for multiple seasons in the offseason.
Well, as we've seen, 3 of the last 4 deadlines, we've talked about how they have, they've done great. They've arguably had the best deadlines 3 of 4 years. Then they get to the offseason and, things change a little bit. So I think we're going to have to see what the narrative looks like come December. Is there going to be more reports out that there's somehow only $15 million to spend again, and then they can't do anything at all? We're going to find out. We're going to find out. So I think.
But is there a chance? Yes, there is a chance.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Of the 2, Naylor would be the more likely one. Fit makes more sense. You have more infielders coming through the pipeline that you could eventually move to third base than you do like a true first baseman coming your way. First base is one of those positions I think you usually have to solve through free agency. You don't see a ton of first basemen come up through the farm system. Not none, but you don't see a lot of them across the league come up and say, yeah, that's our first baseman. He's sticking. First basemen are usually the guys you acquire, whether it's a trade or free agency. And I think for that reason too, paired with the age, Naylor makes a little bit more sense. As much as everybody loves Geno.
Unless the Mariners have a Nick Kurtz coming up through their system, yeah. What you said.
Right. So there's exceptions, right? But it doesn't happen all the time.
No. Because you got to be a plus bat like he is.
Right.
Let's get to our next mailbag question. This comes from Camaro Kid 67 on Instagram. And this question is, are you...
I think he means, are you surprised?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Are we surprised that the Mariners still have 8 top 100 prospects? Does that mean the Mariners came up short?
This is actually an interesting question. It's a good question. My answer is no, they didn't come up short because, again, we gave this deadline an A. They won this trade deadline. I'm not sure there's a team that had a better deadline than the Seattle Mariners. But there's a difference here. There's a difference between coming up short and having the ability to do more. Of course they had the ability to do more because you have the prospect capital to do it. Like you said, all your top 100 guys are still there. Harry Ford didn't go anywhere. You could have done more. Doesn't mean doing more was necessarily the smart tactic to take because, like we'll talk about in the next question, and like we talked about a bit on Friday, the reliever market was insane. You would have had to pay what felt like a ridiculous price to go get some of these relievers. So, no, I don't think it means they came up short that they kept all these guys. Now, I think it means eventually you will have to be willing to part with some of these guys to get greater talent because not all these prospects are going to be able to get on the field together. But it doesn't mean you came up short.
I also think the way that the person asking this question is looking at this is it's focusing more on who the Mariners gave up as opposed to who the Mariners acquire. The focus of the deadline is who you have on your roster to help you go win games, not who you traded away for these players to go acquire them. I think that's just it's just the wrong way to look at it. If you had the ability to trade some of those top 100 guys and get that level of talent back, we're not talking about the guys they traded away. We're talking about the fact they traded for a player who's going to make a meaningful impact on your roster, preferably for multiple seasons. They didn't have to do that because they traded for 3 rentals at the deadline.
Which is very unlike them,
yeah.
But feels like their strategy might have changed a little bit.
They should have done that way earlier.
Yeah, they should have. But you know what? Better late than never.
Yeah.
So last question we got here on the mailbag is this one comes from JM Son on Instagram, and he asks, did they do enough to help the back end of the bullpen? So again, we talked about this for a decent bit on Friday, but we can talk about it again here. I'll throw it to you here.
Did they get enough help for the back end of the bullpen? In a vacuum, no, they did not get enough help in the back end of the bullpen. If we're not even looking at the hitters, we're not looking at the upgrade that the offense is getting, we're not looking at the starting pitching staff potentially bouncing back for the final 2 months of the season, we're just looking at the bullpen. No, I don't think they got enough help. I can explain more, but you can answer first.
I think you hit that nail on the head. Yeah. Again, it doesn't mean they had a bad deadline. They had a great deadline. But if you were just focusing on that one area, they could have used one more arm. They could have used one more power arm, leverage arm, dynamite arm toward the back end of that bullpen. And Caleb Ferguson's a good reliever. I think they could have used the guy a step above him. But what I'll repeat from Friday's episode and what I'll repeat from the reaction we put out at the end of the trade deadline on Thursday across social media is this. The name everybody was circling, especially on the final day of the deadline, was Griffin Jax. For good reason. That dude is a stud. His stuff is nasty, gets all this swing and miss, has 2.5 years of club control. He is one of the game's great relievers. Which is funny because, you look at the guy, he's not exactly the imposing figure that his former teammate Joan Duran is. I mean, Duran is, that guy will give you nightmares facing him. Jax, you just look at him out at the mound, and he just looks like pretty normal dude. He's our size.
We had him on our bullpen banner channel, and Lyle and him were essentially the same size.
I mean, I got a couple of comments saying, man, you two look alike. And I was like, maybe a little. Yeah, we're about the same size, but I'll tell you what I'm not doing. I am not throwing damn near 100 miles an hour like Griffin Jax is and getting 30 teams calling about you at the trade deadline. Well, probably a little less than that. And also ranking in the 100th percentile of baseball in chase rate. Yeah, I'm not doing that like Griffin Jax is. But he is really good. And there's a reason everybody wanted him. What I was going to get to about Jax is now back to the Mariners' point of this. I think the Mariners really wanted him. I think they see what everybody else sees, that he's a stud. He would have really changed the narrative and the outlook in that bullpen. But when you see the Rays give up Taj Bradley for Griffin Jax, that shows the ridiculous asking price that was out on the market this year for relief help. And I don't think the Mariners felt comfortable paying that. And honestly, this ties back to the previous mailbag question of did they come up short versus add all the guys they wanted to add? No, I don't think they came up short. I think they wanted Griffin Jax. I think they wanted one of those leverage arms, but it costed too much. And I think the price equivalent to Taj Bradley for the Mariners, while it's not perfect, feels like to me the Twins were basically saying, we want Bryce Miller if you want Griffin Jax. And the Mariners obviously sit there and say, yeah, well, we're not giving you Bryce Miller for Griffin Jax. We're not giving up Bryce Miller for a reliever. So that conversation ends. And when you see Adam Jude tweet an hour before the deadline saying, hey, sources are saying the Mariners are not expected to make any more moves, and a lot of people weren't happy about it, this is why. You can be mad in the moment, I get it. But when you get behind the curtain and you see what the price is on Griffin Jax, then you understand. And you're like, yeah, this is not about trading Harry Ford or trading a couple of prospects. This would be you're trading Bryce Miller or something like that. And I just don't think they were going to do that. And I don't think they should have done that.
It's not trading just a trade. It's trading for someone that you think is right for you, but also giving up the package that you feel comfortable giving up. Because that's why the Mariners did these first 3 trades. The packages all worked out for them. They had no problem saying yes to those and believed the players they were acquiring were upgrading their roster. You can believe that Griffin Jax upgrades your roster. Think of what happens if you trade Bryce Miller, though. Think about everything else that cascades because you trade Bryce Miller away for Griffin Jax. So you have Griffin Jax in your bullpen. This question goes away because you have the back end help. You might have to trade another prospect along with Bryce, or maybe it is just Bryce. Let's just say it's just Bryce at this point. Now you're a starter down at this point. Logan Evans, as we've talked about, has pitched well. His last start wasn't great, but overall he's pitched well at the big league level. He's got an innings limit coming up. The team has showed they're pretty flip-floppy with Emerson Hancock in terms of leaving him in the rotation. So that gets us to the point where if you trade for Griffin Jax, you would have to turn around and trade for another starter right away. If your plan is compete this year, and it's all in, because the premise of trading for Griffin Jax is being all in. But now you need another starter as well. It just gets really complicated really quickly if that's the decision you have to make to go get that. I'd love Griffin Jax. Just doesn't seem like it was a realistic possibility at this deadline for the Mariners, because they operate how they like to operate. They don't trade starters for relievers. Doesn't make any sense for them.
And I don't think most teams would do that. The Rays did, but most teams probably aren't doing that. Again, Jeff Passan called that the biggest surprise of the deadline, the Rays trading for Griffin Jax. Yeah. So that's why the Mariners didn't pay the package. And by the way, they were very, very deep into talks for Joan Duran. Like, it sounds like that one got really close. So it's not like they weren't looking to add into that back end of the bullpen. And to have Duran would have been amazing. But the Phillies ended up giving the Twins an offer they liked a little bit better. And then for Jax, the price feels like it was higher than what it was for Duran. Because Duran, like, the Phillies didn't have to end up giving up Andrew Painter like we talked about. It was a little less.
But the Mariners also didn't really have a Mick Abel to give up.
Right.
As much as, again, I love Logan and Emerson, they're not Mick Abel. So you couldn't draw that equivalent.
Abel hasn't been that great.
But he's got more pedigree than...
Well, he was a high first rounder, yeah.
And throws harder.
That's fair. Well, Logan and Emerson run it up. But yes, maybe.
I mean, Logan's sitting 92 this year.
Oh, you mean like where they sit? Yeah. I
yeah.
mean, okay. Then yeah.
Just a little bit more upside with him.
That's for now, yeah. For sure. But yeah, like, I get it. Doesn't mean that
it just didn't work out. Getting high leverage bullpen arms at this deadline did not work out for the Mariners. If they didn't acquire Naylor and Geno, and relievers were the only thing they were targeting at this deadline, and they didn't get these guys, then we'd be a little more pissed off right now. But that's why you have all these facets of your team to try and offset some of the other areas where we might be a little weaker.
Right. Yeah, well, that was a good batch of mailbag questions. Those were good. And hopefully we cleared up any trade deadline questions that people wanted to send in, because you guys had good questions. So, like I said, this is obviously the team now. And hopefully with this team, they're kind of set to rock and roll. And hopefully they really kind of get on a win streak. Like we said, as we're recording this, they obviously won 3 of 4. So
Of course. Geno hit 3 home runs in the series.
Yeah.
It's good vibes only. And we will dive all into the series in more details, as Lyle said at the top of the episode, for Wednesday's episode.
Yeah. And speaking of our guy Logan, he threw 6 shutout on Sunday. That's confirmed. Blanked the Rangers and got the Mariners a series win. Love to see it.
No. I'm sure I gave a great reaction to it as well on our social media channels.
Yeah, exactly. So Mariners 3-4 confirmed. Shout out Mariners. Post trade deadline, they're 3-1. You'll love to see it. Anyway, sorry, I forgot to add one final mailbag question that I was not going to forget. Somebody asked, Lyle, is the reason the Mariners didn't trade for Stephen Kwan because they're setting out to get Kyle Tucker? Great question. Yes. You guys know K-Tuck's an M. Why did the Mariners not go get a right fielder at this deadline when you still could have argued that you could go get a guy there? Because they're not doing that. Like, they're waiting to the winter, and they're signing K-Tuck. Like, it's that simple, guys. Like, it's coming. As we've learned at this deadline, Jerry and Justin were playing chess, not checkers. They continue to play chess, not checkers. They said, we're not going and trading for fucking Luis Robert, who strikes out 1,000,000% of the time. We're waiting to get Kyle Tucker. They're getting them.
They always have the future in vision, and the future looks like a glorious Kyle Tucker.
God. That City Connect jersey that I'm going to buy of his is going to absolutely bang.
Yeah.
I can't wait. All right. That just about wraps up this edition of the Marine Layer podcast. You guys know the drill. If you want to listen to all of our stuff or follow all of our stuff, go over to our website, marinelayerpod.com. You can find everything over there between our audio episodes, video episodes. Again, if you're listening, please download, rate, and review these episodes 5 stars. It really does help. Like, comment, and just hit that subscribe button on YouTube. That's the best way you guys can support the channel. You can check out our merch, our Patreon, live show schedules. Again, that's all over at our website, marinelayerpod.com. And you can find us across social media at Marine Layer Pod. That's TJ. I'm Lyle. As always, we thank you guys for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon.